I could teach anybody how to look up parts. I can't teach people to work hard.
He's a parts leader who has spent more than 2 decades building his career. From wholesale parts to parts manager across Maryland, Utah, and now at a Mercedes Benz. He's seen how the parts counter can either support the shop or slow it all down. Today we're talking parts. Joe, you better be listening. Leadership and communication. And most importantly, what the rest of the dealership needs to hear nor understand life at the parts counter. Shawn Parrett, thank you very much, and welcome to the Wrench Turners podcast.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
Most welcome. So let's take it back. We've talked a little bit before, got to know a bit about each other over the last, 2 years? We've been going back and forth on LinkedIn, talking about this and talking about that. So I've had a lack of parts people on the show. Perhaps their reasons, perhaps my reasons, I don't know. I have a long-standing relationship with parts where, as a mechanic, most of us think immediately parts is just not doing their job and that it's super easy. And that is a mindset that I'd really like to end. I will agree, and Shawn will probably agree with me, that parts has a place. They can support the team or they can hurt the team, and how the leader of the parts department really shapes that image. So today we're going to get into a bit about that. But first, I want to get back into Shawn's beginnings. I want to ask, as I ask everybody, what really got you into automotive in the first place?
Okay. It's the easiest thing. I pretty much didn't have any option. We were speaking a little bit off camera about faith, non-faith. For me, I'll boil it down pretty much. I was adopted from the hospital by my grandmother. We didn't have anything. Like, growing up in Baltimore City, it's just not poor, like rural poor, where you're just poor. You're like inner city poor. So not only are you poor, you don't have anything. As soon as you walk out the door, there's the violence and the drugs. Like, as soon as your door opens, it's right there. So for me, I kind of got around doing stupid things, being in that area, and I needed a job. And I knew a girl who uncle worked at a dealership, Chevrolet dealership, and it was in the county. I grew up like right in the city, so I'd have to catch a bus about hour and a half, 2 buses actually. And I started working because I kind of had this drive inside. My grandmother who raised me, it challenged me. So I started working at a Chevrolet dealership, 4.25 an hour, which was minimum wage in Maryland back in 96. And I worked as stock. If people have been in this industry, they remember the old uniforms that weren't soft, weren't like polos. They're like the hard ones that, as soon as you took off the hanger, they still had the same fit, pants, sweat. There's, no AC back then. If it's 100 degrees day, it's hot. So I just started doing it. But I don't know. I always felt like I had a drive inside me. Like I had dropped out of high school in the meantime. Just I felt I never really been around positive people in my life. Everybody I was kind of the same situation we were or worse. So it was a big dealership. There was guys there making, 6 figures, selling wholesale, things like that. And a lot of the guys took me under the wing. Finally felt pity on me. I'd never known anything else. And I just kind of pushed myself to, I didn't have a car. I mentioned, like I said, caught the bus, couldn't afford car. And car insurance was the thing back then. And I worked long enough to get a car. Bought a Chevy Cavalier in like 2000, 2001. And
Cavalier!
Chevy
I
Cavalier,
love those.
man,
I
I
love
drove that.
those cars.
It was junk. It wasn't a cool car, but I could afford it. When you're making, a couple $100 a week, you can't get a lot. So I took that, and then somebody I had known was a technician at a Mercedes dealership. And they knew me, they knew my work ethic, but I never learned how to look. I've never even till today been a car guy. So he's like, but he knew my work ethic. He's like, look, man, they need a second shift parts advisor from like 2 to 11. And they said, look, man, if you need anything, I'll help you out. I'll get the guys to help you out. So I took the job there, and I made they signed me on for $29K. That was my yearly salary,
How
so
old were you?
this is 2001, 24, 25.
Nice. So
Yeah.
just contextually here, $29,000 a year as a
Yeah.
24-year-old man.
Yeah.
That's, even today, is a half decent start. And we're talking 25 years ago. So you're probably like, oh my God, a real job, a real paycheck.
I still lived at home. So like now it's just my money, it's like that, and I did it for a few years, and I got a job. Another dealership had an opening, and I had a little bit of gift of gab, so I could do wholesale, and I learned how to do parts because I did retail from like 2 to 5, and then I did back counter from like 5 to 11, as car industries. There's a lot of midnight nights too. But I went and did wholesale and I worked myself up to being like really good. I was at the dealership for like 5, 6 years. And then another dealership had a buy sell. And I went there kind of as assistant parts manager, worked myself up to parts manager. They were going through parts managers like, every few months. And finally, Mercedes went to like our district rep, went to our owner and said, look, you keep on going through people. And they're like, well, people's hard to find. They give the same excuses. And like, well, you got your parts manager right here. He said, who do you think's running your department when you're going through these guys? And they kind of like, well, he's a little bit rough around the edges, things like that. And he said, "Give the guy a chance, we'll help you out." So they basically said, "Listen to us." He said, "We're not gonna do you wrong. If we say do something," and this is Mercedes-Benz speaking, "it's the right thing to do." And that's how I got my beginning. I worked there some years. I had a kid at 40, I had my first child at 40, and I didn't want him growing up in the same type things I did. But so even we're a different area, the bad
Uh-huh.
things are still here. So I started putting my ears out, saying, "Hey, I'm looking to possibly move," and I got an opportunity out here in Utah, and I've been
Uh-huh.
here 9 years now, so next year sorry, in a few months, I'll turn 50, next year I'll be out here 10 years, and a lot of things I've learned over that I'll call it almost 30 years in this industry, from 96 to this year, 30 years now. Like I said, and, I've seen everything, I've seen, like I said, from making that $4 an hour up to right now, and my biggest thing is I say is humility is the biggest thing, humility, drive, and consistency, and that's where
Uh-huh.
I'm at. Like, I'm always like I could challenge somebody to be like, have more drive than me for a day. They might have it for a day, they might have it for a week, but I still have the same consistency and drive I've had since, like I said, catching a bus, leaving at 5 something in the morning, waiting on one of these drug corners for a bus to go up to work and make, 4 or $5 an hour.
So it's interesting. So you went through a couple of things. Where you got your start, you started in a dealer and somebody gave you a shot, second shift in parts as a parts advisor. It's interesting how many folks find themselves and say they're in the car industry, they're in the automotive industry, and they're not car people. Well, you
Mhm.
are, you're just not super passionate about it. Like it's not a big deal for you to see what the latest, greatest next generation of product is. It's like, that's awesome. Okay, how are we going to supply the people that are in the store to do their job well? That's an interesting thing because I've now heard a couple of people in the last year say so, and that they seem to turn out to be top leaders. And it's interesting because that then the next step is how are they able to lead without it being super passionate about cars? You don't need to be super passionate about cars to be a leader. And this is where a lot of leaders, a lot of young leaders, a lot of new leaders don't understand. They haven't been taught, they haven't been coached, they haven't been given any of this experience. Is that leading people doesn't mean you have to be passionate about the product. If you're passionate about leading people,
Yeah.
you have to be passionate about making processes that allow the business to win, which is also indirectly allow the people you employ to win. So
Mhm.
as you go through this and you listen, it's like, oh, I'm not a car guy. That's not the important thing that you should take away. The important thing is you should take away is they've got 30 years in automotive, leading people, almost 10 years at one place, which means he's successful in one place for that business. The churn has gone down because we know as mechanics, parts managers and service managers who have high churn rates of parts people and technicians, those service managers don't last. So lower churn rate, you can assume after 10 years, higher business success, you can assume after 10 years at a luxury branded store. But whilst they have a little bit more money to play with, they are just as careful with their money as a store that's pinching pennies at a high volume store. This concepts are the same that you have to listen to. So talked about your first year and kind of quasi into that someone gave you a shot and then someone gave you another shot. It's also interesting to hear. You're putting in the work. You're showing up every day. You're putting in the hard work every day required to be successful for yourself. You're showing that and showing up every day consistently. We talk about, things on a regular basis. Persistence, right? It's that persistence, consistent effort every single day. It shows when you show up. When you show up, it shows to other people. When other people see that over and over again, they give you things, whether it's opportunities, whether it's a promotion, whether it's more money, whether it's more responsibilities, whether it's a, hey, I'm the GM of this store. I'm going to open another store. Would you like to be the person who helps run that store? Those kinds of things when you show up consistently. Okay, so let's take this back another step a little bit. We're talk about the time between, say, 2005. So you've been in the industry since about 2001.
Yes.
Actually, 96, sorry, you said. So 2001 to 2005, things going. 2007, 2008, things were really tough for all of us. Really, really, really tough for all of us. In 2008, I was getting, 10-hour paychecks as a flat rate tip. 10 hours every 2 weeks. Take us through what it was like being an automotive from your perspective in 2008.
2008, 2000, I learned it really well. I mean, that's when Cash for Clunkers were out and things like that. And for me, that was from like say 2008 to 2010 was a hard time for me as well because I got big headed. I did really
Mm,
well parts, you know. As a parts manager, I was wholesale was like my cup of tea. That was my thing. I get accounts. I knew what they wanted. I still didn't know how to be a true parts manager. Like day supply, loss, all those things that are fundamental. I never learned because I had moved my way up by just doing what I did. I showed up for work every day. I had good morale, my team. I sold parts. I worked hard. I worked the hours. So for me, I was that. And then I got big headed. I didn't get along with my service manager so well, and we found out there's little things like I'm a visual person. He's an audio person. The easiest way to say it is, do you like movies or listen to music? He liked listening to music. I like watching movies. So there's a lot of things we didn't see eye to eye on because we had two different skills. So I had an offer. There was a new point opening up and I took it. They offered me like 10 grand more a year. And it gave me a chance to like, oh, I felt it's a new point. It went out. So I worked for that dealership. I left and I went there. And it was hard because you open up a brand new point, all the things, expectations going on to you. And it was hard. And then about 2.5 years later, we had a buy sell happen and
mhm,
we all lost our job. Me, service manager, GM, you know how it works to clean house. And I kinda had rubbed my old dealership the wrong way, and they were the principal dealership in the city. So they had 2 different dealerships, and it kinda gave me a bad name. So I went and wrote service for 1 year. A buddy of mine that was a service writer became a service manager at Chevrolet dealership, and I went and wrote service. So I got to see so many things from the technician's perspective, the service perspective, dealing with customers, CSI. If you're writing at a Chevy store, you're writing up 25 ROs a lot a day. And I did really well at it. I love dealing with the customers. I took it as it's pretty easy. Like I wrote up the ticket correctly. I looked at what the customer's needs was. I just didn't write customer hears noise. Something I always heard the things back when, working at back counter, you hear the technicians coming in complaining about, man, look at what am I supposed to do with this, showing you the ROs. So I tried not to be that person. I learned that, all you got to do is don't be scared to call the customer. Call the customer with the update. Get fast turnarounds. And this is before X time or iRecon, where you had the RO written on the back. You had to take the time, write it, highlight it with yellow. Those things. So I learned how to really take care of the customer. So I did that for a year, and somebody that was in my network got a job as a first time GM, and
mhm,
so he needed a parts person. I went in, took a pay cut, everything, because I really wanted to learn. It was a struggling store. It was a bigger group, but we were like the next to last dealership. He's like, man, even our own body shops we own will not buy from us, even though they're supposed to. So, and the only other store that was doing worse was something about the size of a Jiffy Lube, just a small middle of nowhere. And there's so many things when you're small and everything is not working, you learn how to do everything right
mhm,
and did that store, and that's the store I moved to Utah from. I loved working there. Great family owned, 20 something dealerships in a group, but I always try to consistently be top 3 for them. And not just in numbers, but also the metrics where it's lost sales, BG kits sold, things like that. Every metric account, inventory variance, all these different little things that aren't based upon how much you sell. I wanted to be the best in that. Like, that was my whole thing to drive. And leaving, I always say like leaving that organization I did originally and I left, I was so big headed, I thought my stuff didn't stink, that type of thing. And it really humbled me because at the end of the day, I realized, especially moving this new dealership, there was stuff I didn't know. But going here, doing it slow, it's like in the F1 movie, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. I
mhm.
kind of started that way too.
Interesting. Interesting. Getting through what is the financial recession of 2008, 2009, changing stores and doing
Yeah.
that, changing stores with a big head, being humbled both by recession and by a complete change of everything. It was a humbling, as you say, experience. I think we all need to go through that, and I think at some stage or another, we all do go through that in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's, you know what, from the experience I've had, my own personal life, big time, making a leap, but not necessarily before you're ready, but when you think you're more than ready. When you believe that you are more than ready, more than capable, all of the things that overconfidence that comes with arrogance of a lack of experience, right? That's usually what that happens. That seems to be happens. It's like there's a lack of experience, a large volume of ambition, and a large volume of ego equates to getting smashed in the face by something.
Yeah.
Whether it's getting fired or getting laid off because of buy itself, yeah, they could go any way those ways. So it's interesting to hear you talk about. So one of the bits in there that I want to get in the nitty gritty here for the technicians that are listening, perhaps the parts people that are listening as well, and the service advisors that listen, is that you've now dealt with all of them. It might not be necessarily a long period of time, like you said, you wrote service for a year. There's gonna be
Yeah.
service writers out there and the technicians out there that writes something on road for a year. He doesn't know what he's talking about. A year is more than enough time. 2,000 hours, two and a half
Yeah.
thousand hours a year is in a year. So if you write service for 2,500 hours, you may not be an expert, but you're definitely going to go through a lot of things at 20 to 25 work orders a day that someone who has never written service before will have ever conceptualized. As in a technician, you have no concept of what it's like in a service drive if you've never written service, even for a day. You write it for a year, you get a lot more experience to understand what's going on in there. Same thing with at the front counter or at the back counter in parts, because they are different things, especially depending on the size of the store. If you have a front counter person, they are not necessarily the kind of person you want at the back counter with the technicians. Technicians want things in a certain way and pretty consistently want things in a certain way. At the front, when you are only dealing with customers, they want things in a certain way, and it's not the same way the technician needs them. They need a
Yeah.
significant more amount of time, empathy, care, and patience because they don't really know what they want. Even the really, really, really DIY guy, yard mechanic guy, I know this and that, whatever, they still don't know jack, right? They still don't know jack. And the parts people at the front need to empathize with that and still overcome those hurdles and those obstacles because they still also need to overcome sales objections on the front counter like a service advisor does. They still trying to make the sale. And then the third thing in there that Shawn has been talking about here, and I try to touch on a little bit here, is wholesale. Wholesale is another animal. Wholesale is a parts person going out into the real world and doing cold sales or doing warm sales based on existing clients. So they're going to go to a shop and trying to get the shop to buy from the dealership. That is a foreign entity in the dealership. No one does that. No one. The only person that does cold sales in a dealership like that is the wholesale parts person. It is autonomous. They're like their own
Yep.
little account manager that goes out in the world. The exception to that is your BDC people who do cold sales. The difference being is, for the most part, they are trying to sell a car, not trying to sell the dealership in terms of selling a part or a series of parts to make a long-term relationship. Because the BDC person is trying to sell a car. Wholesale parts person is trying to build a relationship. So the person,
Yes.
that shop keeps buying parts over and over again. It's a different kind of cold outreach. So back to Struck Up. Now that we've gone through that, you also said something in there that I'd like you to explain in as simple a detail for my mechanic friends and family. Key indicators for parts. You said a couple of things in there, and I've forgotten already what those two things you said in there. One was dealing with inventory. One was dealing with something else I've already forgotten. I've forgotten the name of. But can you please give us 5 parts-based things like obsolescence that you can explain to teach a technician something about parts they probably have never heard about before?
Yeah. And I'm going to back up real fast on something. One of the biggest things for working as a service advisor, I was on the other side of the fence now. That parts department was so different than I'd seen ourselves. Like I got it. We're like, can you check to see anybody? Oh man, we got to call around and check. Just overnight it, or we don't want to overnight. There's so many things that like I hit a wall with that I'm like, man, I don't want to be that guy. Like it was so hard to do business when you have the technician needing customers, in a loaner or not in a loaner. There are so many things you had to deal with. You went to the parts department and you got like the wall. There was no kind of like, we're trying to help. So that
Mm-hmm.
taught much of what not to be. But to get to your 5 things, the one is obsolescence, and the easy way to see about it is, like, you have parts that you don't sell, and things like that. You're kinda held to the same thing like a used car manager is or a new car manager where you got vehicles on a lot for a year. They're not selling, you're wasting money just holding that parts into your inventory. So there are things where somebody's like, "Oh, we should sell it." Like, I've seen in my career oil filters that you would hand out multiples a day. Then you realize I haven't sold that oil filter in over a year. And unfortunately, you have to look at it as, okay, it's just an oil filter, but you have to look at it as it's a $10, $12, or $15 cost. It adds up. And if I hold everything thinking it's going to sell, my parts farm's gonna look like Costco, the size, if I had everything. But you also have to look at other options, like, if I return this, can I probably pick it up from somebody? And the answer is, "Well, yeah." So you kinda look at things of, I have an inventory and a way for me to get new parts in that are now starting to sell. I have to get the parts out that don't sell. You still kinda have an inventory balance they're gonna want you at. So if I don't return these old parts or sell them off or get rid of them, I don't have room for the new parts that you're gonna need. So that's how you have to look at obsolescence. Lost sales. Lost sales for me as a parts person, I've been in so many meetings, and I can tell you, if you got 10 guys up and ask for their explanation of what constitutes a lost sale, you're gonna have 10 different answers. Everybody has their different belief. For me, I feel that if we quoted it or looked it up and I don't have it, that's a lost opportunity. I'm not gonna go to the service writer and say, "If we would have had that, would we have sold it?" I'm not taking a chance. I'd rather have a extra part here and there that we have looked up, we have quoted, whether it's on the phone to a wholesale place. It takes a few hits for it to come in the system anyway. So if a technician looks up something we don't have, if for whatever reason vehicle leaves and I lost sale it, it's not going to kill my inventory. End of the year, I might have a few extra parts I took a chance on, but the parts I took a chance on that we sold far outweighs that. Let's see what else we got. We got the obsolescence, we got lost sales. Quantity on hand is a big thing too. And when you phase something in, so phasing in is, where you look at things like you come in for a vehicle and it needs a water pump. Maybe it's a new engine. And how do you get that part into your system? So I have my DMS set up that if I have a lost sale on a vehicle part that's like 1 to 3 years and a certain like engine or mechanical stuff, like I don't do it so much on a fender or some kind of body shop thing. I will bring that part in. And it also goes back to your inventory. Like if you have 9 out of 10 parts for an engine job, you might as well not have anything. So I go real heavy with mechanical. If I have 9 out of 10 items for a collision job, it does them no good too. So what happens is if I have 3 out of 10, same as 0 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. So what happens is I focus my physical on hand inventory more on mechanical than I do collision because I could tell the person on the collision, like, hey, we're 2 to 3 days out on parts. That's cool. They don't need to know whether I have one part, 9 out of 10, or 5 out of 10. For me, I don't want to tell a technician that, yeah, I said all the parts are 2 days out and I'm missing one gasket or some kind
Mhm.
of small little one-time use only bolt. So I really do a good job on focusing everything for more mechanical. So if I have a, $1 million inventory, I want 90% of it to be those type of things because that's what pays in. It goes back to, the technicians, they're our number one customer, and when you hear guys like I've heard this personally where guys say, well, no, they're not. They do this and I sell more on wholesale. Well, I tell you what, we deliver the parts to the techs, and they're the closest people to us. They're closer to any shop I deal with is the technicians in our shop. Their return rate is pretty low compared to like calibers and these different collision places. And the most markup I have of anybody is in our shop. So for me, the technicians are the easiest guys we deal with. Most of the time, they tell us what they want. Somebody else sells what we want to sell. It's not even wholesale, but you have all those things. So that's how I see the shop. Try to think about some other things. You got lost sales. There's not a lot in parts. It's what the technicians, like you mentioned, they think it's a pretty easy job. Most of the time, it's pretty easy. It's not hard as they make it
So
seem.
then let's go a little bit deeper on one of those things. So when
Yeah.
you are creating phase in or when you're creating inventory or new inventory or you're creating mechanical inventory in that regard, you're talking about having 9 out of 10 parts. And one of my friends and one of the early guests on the show was Kaylee Filio. And with Parts Edge, they really help clean up from what I understand, because I'm super not a parts person, they understand and clean up part sources and help service managers and parts managers and fix directors really hone in the parts department. When you are setting up sources and when you are setting up those kinds of things, what are you doing? Like, you're talking about having a part set up in your DMS, and it's got to go through a series of checks. Do I understand that correctly? Where it's got to go through a series of checks before it orders it. What is the that you are setting up? Can you go through that?
Well, Kaylee, I know Kaylee really well. I've been on her show too, Parts Girl podcast. Different systems, like I would say, if you have CDK, be CDK, you have to be a in your office, glued to the system type of parts manager. I run off a dealer track. I always say dealer track makes things very simple compared to like CDK and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So you can have all these different sources based on call. You can have like there's parts manager have 30 different. They have like ones called trying. If you're monitoring it, I pretty much have like 5 sources. One being tires, just so there. Collision, and you have mechanical. I don't have mechanical under this rate. I don't have mechanical under this rate because we live in daily stock order age. We're not doing back where it used to be, where you had a stock order a week or things like that. We get it where what I sell today pops up for the stock order tomorrow, and I get it the next day. So for me, from me selling the part to getting it back on a shelf, it's going to be 2 days.
Hmm.
So I don't have to go through where I'm sitting here running a report. And then next thing you know, I'm at my computer all day long like this. I like selling parts too. I like interacting. I like training. I like all those things that during a day, if I'm just glued to my reports, I can't do. I can't interact with my people. I can't interact with my wholesale. I can't train. I can't just be one of the guys for few minutes here and there if one of the techs stop by. So
Hmm.
I say you have to simplify it. When you oversimplify things, that's where it's hard to be consistent. It's like anything else. If you have a 3-point checklist, right? It's very easily to do that 3-point checklist every day. If you got a 30-point checklist, there's gonna be days you can't get to all 30 check things. It might be a 15 one day, it might be a 20. So whatever you have to do, you only have 10 hours a day. You're gonna have to simplify it. And that's where I look at you get it where you kind of know it. Like these are collision parts, these are your mechanical parts. Your computer's gonna do all the work for you anyway. They're gonna tell you, like, hey, you know what? You look at your sales, you're selling 20 of these a month, or you're selling one a month. They're gonna do everything for you. They're gonna give you a recommended stock level as it is. So the computer does the hard work for us, stuff we can't do in our head. And you just have to kind of make sure it's simplified. You don't overthink it because the small ratio of problems you'll have not overthinking it sure makes up for it. So like I said, Kayla does a
Hmm.
great job. And I think a lot of their system, I think it's a lot of the guys' demeanor too. There's a lot of guys that are parts managers that can't sell parts retail. They don't have that. They don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to explain it. They don't know how to come overject. They just like to sit in front of their computer and basically it's almost like a game to them. And I'd rather
Hmm.
be 99% right and be able to do a lot more things and try to be 100% and not be able to do anything else that benefits.
Interesting. So there's a couple of things in there. I'd rather
Yeah.
be 90% right and feel good than be 100% right and all kinds of stuff else not working. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Talking about getting the computer to do its job so that you can tend to people. Also, we've now said this a couple of times in this very simple recording is that leaders lead people. You have
Yeah.
other people who manage processes or other things that manage processes. And if you as a leader lead those people well, lead those things well, the processes get to the balance level of complexity that they need to be. Whether it needs to be 3 or whether it needs to be 30, it depends on the scenario and the person and the role and so on and so forth. And knowing when and where to use those different complexities is the highlight of a high value leader. It's interesting how those things come up, especially in parts, ladies and gentlemen. So you have to think about that way. You're talking about you like interacting and like doing the retail and you like doing the coaching side of being parts manager and being in front of that way. What's something that a new parts manager needs to hear in terms of how to coach people who are just starting in parts? It's kind of a self-reflection, right? 30 years ago, you got this opportunity to be a second shift parts advisor. You had somebody that took a chance on you and taught you things. What is maybe something they taught you that you have continued to teach people for the last 3 years?
So one of my things I tell my guys this. So whatever I think I tell you, I tell my guys. I said, there's a lot of people that only chase the money. And I tell my
Mhm.
people, what I've always said is I take care of my team, I take care of the dealership, I take care of the customers. I never have to worry about chasing money. If the only fixation is like, I gotta make this, you're always gonna be chasing money and you're gonna lose out on a lot. So I personally like green people or green employees for parts because I've seen so many parts guys that like they have the wrong attitude. They've been in bad places. They've gotten lazy. I always say like if I need to go hire a parts person tomorrow, I walk into O'Reilly, I walk into AutoZone or those type of places. I want the guy standing when I come in, "How you doing, sir? What can I do for you? What brings you in today?" You know, how they ever have their slogans, right? I
Mhm.
love those people because for one, they're not paid good. They're paid like I did. I got paid 30 years ago pretty much. They have a great attitude. They know how to work when they're not working. So when there's no customers in the store, they're putting away parts, they're putting up planograms and things like that. They come to work on bad schedules. They're there on Sundays. They're there 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. They're so used to not being treated good. I mean, overall, so those are the people I like because I know I could teach anybody how to look up parts. I can't teach people to work hard. I can't teach people to come in, when they're needed. So I love green employees. Like I said, you give anybody, the computer screen and they know a little bit about cars. It's like, where's Waldo? Where do you find this? They know how, but consistently to be good, that's what I like. That impresses me more than a guy goes like, "Well, I got 35 years back counter on Ford." First time I answer is like, "Why you only at the back counter on Ford dealership for 35 years? Why haven't you done anything where somebody gives you an opportunity to move up?" Those things. So that's why I like, and the result is you got to train your people. You got to like them. My first real parts manager was an older guy. I never had a father or anything growing up. He was almost like a father figure to me and the other guys. You remember little things at Christmas of, "Hey, here's a set of gloves," little things, right? He'd take us out once in a while. We all go out to eat after work together. We almost like, everybody says like family, but for me, it was a family. He's like my father figure to me.
Mhm.
And I try to be that because, I turned 50 here in August. My oldest guy right now is 25 years old. So I don't know all the cool things they talk about, like the TikTok trend. I might not know that. At the end of the day, everybody in my department knows I truly care. The technicians know I truly care. I never give an attitude. They even feel bad sometimes, knocking more to, "Can I come in? Can you help me?" Whatever you need. I said, "Look, here's my phone number. You need something, text me from the shop." Okay. And I sit there and say, that's something that I think a lot of people got away from. They care for their employees. And I say that as a parts manager, if you care, they might go somewhere else, get a few extra bucks. That's a possibility, but they're not going to go to anywhere else that the manager actually cares about them, like as a
Care
person.
as Kelly said, a short and I don't know how the order is gonna go. You might even go out before Kelly Verdi's episode, and I can't wait to share that one with you guys because this line is so epic. It's the level of care equals the level of culture. So the
Mhm.
more you care about your team, the more they care about the business, the more they care about the business and the business does well. The business does well, the more you care about the people because you can afford to do even more things for the people. It is a circle and it is awesome. And it shows when you are that passionate about helping people grow, helping people be successful, whether it's in the shop or in the parts department or at front as sales, it doesn't matter. The more you care, the more good things happen, especially when that care spreads to the other parts of the team, where the technicians start to help you, where the parts people start to help them. They start to go out in the shop floor and say, how do we figure this out? What is it? What is it? Something isn't quite jiving. How do we fix this? When they care so
Yeah.
much like that, I'd love to hear that. So, okay, so we went through a couple examples of things that mechanics need to learn from parts. I'm going into a little bit more level of detail. What I'd then like to do is for the technicians specifically, managing technicians as a parts manager. So you're not really in charge of them, but you still have to manage them in a certain degree. You have to help them communicate effectively so your parts people understand, and you have to teach your parts people how to effectively communicate with the technicians. What's perhaps one thing that you have taught your parts people to help communicate better with technicians?
Find an answer. It all goes back to, and as like for me, how you mentioning the type of people you have. Like
Mhm,
I have my introverts working service, like wholesale retail that likes to talk, right? Technicians,
mhm,
that's dangerous if you have an extrovert working with the technicians, because now you have the technicians talking to the guys all the time, right? So you don't have to have the
mhm,
stalest guy in the world. You just got to have a person that he's not going to keep a technician there for oil change talking to him 20 minutes about what they did over the weekend.
mhm,
Thing I teach my guys is have an answer. So the easy answer is like, "Oh, and have this in stock." Great. That's the easy answer. Majority of them give. Hey, I don't have this in stock, but I already called. I found another guy. We're sending one of the valets real fast, go downtown and pick it up. Great. Or hey, we got to order these tires. Looks like the vehicle's here. I have them for will call. We're sending somebody down. Like we're pretty prime located. So we're fortunate enough because we're in a city, we can do that. Like everything's around us. But don't give well, we can't find it. You know, I hate the biggest thing I hate is the parts manager's like, well, I gotta pay a pickup fee. You're not paying full price pickup fee. Like if you buy from dealership down the street, might be 10% over cost. So you need this gasket that's $3. You're paying 30 cents pickup fee for it. The thing is, it holds up the technician. Technicians hate pulling vehicles out. Now they got to take the vehicle out, park it, get dispatched another repair order to move on. Just pay the
And just
pickup
to
fee.
that point, DB's very specific. Not only do we not like it, it makes us incredibly inefficient.
Yeah,
Incredibly inefficient. Every car that you have to pull out and pull back in that manner, simply because you don't have an answer. It's like we're waiting 15 minutes for an answer. Well, there's a whole problem with the waiting for 15 minutes for an answer. That's a different conversation. But when they're waiting for 15 minutes, it's like, I don't know. I don't know. I love your response. Always have an answer. This, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I can, that parts, that is something that I regularly receive as an answer from parts people. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Well, do we have it in stock? Yes or no? It's a yes or no question. It's a yes or no answer. Do we have it in stock? No. Can we get it from factory? Meaning overnight or this afternoon rush or whatever. I don't know, which means they haven't looked.
yeah.
Does
We
another dealer that's close by have it? I don't know, which means they haven't looked. Like in that time window, the question then becomes, so there's a cycle in there. We're talking about cycles here a little bit. If a technician submits a parts ticket or a parts and availability request, like, do we have this part? How much is it? So that the service advisor can price it out. That timeline, how long is that timeline for you in your shop currently? Like from, let's say at 9 a.m., a technician submits a P&A request to say, I need a water pump. Do we have one? How much is it? Send it to the service advisor because this car needs one because it's leaking. From that point that he sends in the request to the time that the service advisor communicates it to the technician that we're going to do it. What's that timeline in your shop right now?
I tell you what, from getting quotes out, we use X Time, and we're a Mercedes store, so everything gets a quote. Trust me, and so we do. We just don't do the cabin filter brake flush quotes. We do a lot of quotes, but I'd say 10 minutes. That's probably on the worst quote. But what we do is I enable my guys to make decisions. They don't have to ask me. So my guys are trained that, like we are around 5 hours in RO customer pay, which is probably unheard of in this industry, but we're around that. So we look at things and my guys have the freedom to do this. They don't have to ask me if they screw up. It's no big deal. But we assume the majority of stuff is going to be sold. The numbers prove it at our store. They have a very high close rate. Now, if you got a 30-year-old vehicle, you need $10,000 of different things. Yeah, we realize that. But we realize within this time frame of mileage, this time frame of year, our guys do a great job. We have the parts. So we do like little things, like somebody quoting tires. We don't have those tires. We kind of preemptive sell these and order them before it's sold by the service advisor. If we see something that, hey, you know what? We don't have this. We look around and we have X time, so we shoot a quick message. We'll shoot to the advisor, so he opens up the sell screen too. Is like, hey, XYZ has a place. You think it's going to sell? We'll go ahead and get it. We already set that up so that we don't have to go back. They come back, hey, I sold this. Anybody have it? Oh, let me see. It takes moments to do those things. So I give my guys the crystal ball. You think it's going to sell? Order it. You know what? It's almost VOR time is over. So you're
Mm-hmm.
quoting 355. VOR time's over at 4. The vehicle's here. Order it. Worst case,
Mm-hmm.
we'll next time. I hate where, like I said, there's so many things I've seen as a service advisor. I'm in the parts groups too, where I hear these guys complain that I don't mind ordering that part overnight because even if I don't use it, what I gained? The service advisors trust us that, hey
And
guys, man,
you get service advisor trust and technician trust. There is, I can't, the level of game that you guys are hearing and seeing right now is epic. We're talking about preemptively attacking here, not retroactively or reactively on anything here. Did you hear the number, ladies and gentlemen? Did you hear the number? 5 hours per ticket. 5 hours per ticket. I know me at working at a CGR store back in like 2010, 2011, and
Mhm,
then subsequently at a Mercedes store shortly thereafter. Those tickets were like 1.4 to 1.9. A 1.9 hour per work order service advisor was like here at a Dodge store. When I went to Benz, it was like 2.5, 2.7, somewhere in there. You know, the top advisor was like 2.9 or something like that. This is going back a little bit. 5 hours per ticket. The parts people have to be on point to make that happen. And you're hearing it right now. You're hearing it right now. Do you think it's going to sell? They're messaging in between. Do you think it's going to sell? Not has it sold. Do you think it's going to sell? Yes. Get the part. Get it
yeah,
now, and we'll make it happen. Make it
mhm.
happen. So I'm getting chills here because that's awesome. That is when I said at the beginning of this, the difference between a good parts manager and a great parts manager is a dramatic amount of money. Dramatic amount of money between the things they can do and help and grow in wholesale, the things they can do, help and grow at front counter, and most importantly, the stuff that they can do at the back counter when everything is properly running, when you have a team cohesive unit, when you are proactively preparing for sales, for service, for the whole works, it can be life changing for the entire store. Which
Mhm.
brings me to my final question, which I ask every guest that has ever been on the show, over 100 of them now, is what's your one piece of advice to help a technician live a happier, healthier, more productive life?
Well, we mentioned consistency earlier. I always look at I've worked with 4 guys in my career that consistently probably turn 150 to 200 hours every 2 weeks, okay? And I swear, I mention this all the time because I work with one right now, and it's not that they turn they're there 6 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock at night. They work the regular hours, but they're consistently they do the MPIs, they don't have an attitude, and they just work. I mean, if, you see so many guys complaining about the RO or this person got this person, that I swear every single one of them, they're from, like, different races, different backgrounds, but the same thing they have is they just do what it is. So they get the BS RO, they make the most of it. They get the great RO, they make the most of it. They're consistent, they work, they come in, they're not playing on their phones half the day. But I said, though, all those guys, like I said, so much different, okay? But they all come in, get whatever RO they get handed, and they just make the most of it. They don't prejudge people. None of them run credit reports, okay? They don't go, oh, this person's probably not gonna buy anything. Why price it up? Everything from the worst RO they get of the first of the month to the best they get the last day of the month. They have the same process for every single one. If something doesn't go their way, they don't complain about it for 15, 20 minutes, whatever. They go, okay, customer decline. I pulled it out and they pull the next one in. And it's like it's in their mind that all they are is they're just consistent. I work a lot of guys turn good hours, but those are the guys that they have the big house, the beautiful wife, the boat, the cool cars, all the things they have. It's like they have their goal, and they're just consistent with every RO. They don't pre-qualify anybody. If something doesn't go their way, okay, part we are ordered overnight that nobody has somewhere lost in FedEx, right? Or a part they need nobody has. It's on was it intergalactic back order, right? All those things they just go, okay, no worries, and they move on.
Mm-hmm. It's a mindset. It's a consistent mindset. As I've been saying for years now, years and years now, it's the boring stuff that makes us the money. And it's the consistent drive every single day, irrespective of the thing that you work on. Doesn't matter what brand is on the badge that's on the car that's in your bay. It doesn't matter. You could be at a BMW store or a Mercedes store or a Hyundai store. It doesn't matter what's in your bay. You have the same process over and over again. That consistency and that persistent consistency on every single car, doesn't matter who owns it, doesn't matter why. My job is to do the best I possibly can to get this car in as safe as humanly possible and as fast as humanly possible for the customer that we're taking care of. And if you have that mindset on every single car, you end up making more money. So you don't have to be passionate about the cars. You have to be passionate about doing the job,
Yes.
being consistent day in and day out. Because at the end of the day, we don't live to work. We work to live. So if you go into work, you do the job really well, you mesh well with the team, not the cars, the team, you have a positive mindset, you're going to do really well. So on that note, thank you very much for that piece of advice. Thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your Sunday to record with us today, good sir. So I think we're going to wrap the episode up there, folks. There's lots of good tidbits in there. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you like it. Subscribe, share it with a mechanic or a parts person that you might know that might need to hear these words of wisdom from Shawn. And we're going to end with a quote, as we always do. And this was interesting. It is amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. Harry S. Truman. Remember, folks, negative pushes, positive pulls, and always clean your toys before you put them away.